With 2020 just around the corner, the 1982 classic Blade Runner is about to join the endless list of movies set in a future now past. I guess by definition it's an endless list because that's how time works. So that's kind of redundant. When a work of science fiction passes the date in which it's set, it inevitably leads to a cascade of social media posts from people jokingly upset that they never got their hoverboards or self-lacing footwear. Surprisingly, for me at least, Blade Runner hasn't seen the same level of disappointment. And there's probably two good reasons for that. One, the future depicted in both the film and the 1968 novel it was based on are pretty miserable affairs that no sane person would actually look forward to. And the second reason possibly being that this miserable future might be a little too close to reality. Sure, we don't exactly have flying cars and replicants, but a lot of the technological, societal and ecological issues at the root of Blade Runner's vision of 2019 might be closer to our current reality than you think. The plot of Blade Runner mostly revolves around replicants, synthetic biorobotic creations designed to resemble a living organic being, composed of some organic substance through a process never made entirely clear, and marketed for different forms of labour and pleasure by the Tyrell Corporation. These advanced machines live among humans and are almost indistinguishable bar their superior strength, speed and agility. If you spend any amount of time on the internet, you've probably come across scary tech demos that show how fast the robotics field is developing. If you haven't, then just Google Boston Dynamics and have a seat. This company is behind a number of canine-inspired quadruped robots, one of which, Spot, bears a striking resemblance to the mechanical hound featured in the Ray Bradbury classic Fahrenheit 451, and served as the inspiration for a particularly creepy and terrifying episode of Black Mirror. And it will actually be available to the public soon. They're also the people behind this backflip and humanoid. That's pretty cool. But Boston Dynamics aren't quite the Tyrell Corporation. As impressive as their robots are, it's important to remember that what we've seen of them is from controlled lab demos that show a mixture of remote-controlled and programmed actions. They are not these autonomous creations Twitter would have you believe they are. This clip of Spot opening a door blew up online, causing many to freak out at the prospect of a robot who can recognize door handles and will definitely be able to find you hiding in a closet. But that's not exactly what's happening here. Spot can recognize the obstacle, but to solve the problem, a protocol is initiated by a controller. This is what navigates the claw towards the door, and then it can identify the handle. Then Spot's programming will tell him to open it and continue to carry out his duty. The Hong Kong-based company Hanson Robotics have offered up a more Blade Runner-esque robot in Sophia. Modelled after actress Audrey Hepburn, if you can believe that, Sophia is a social humanoid robot designed to operate help desks and as a companion at nursing homes. The AI program analyses conversation and extracts data that allows it to improve responses in the future, and the goal is, through interacting with humans, she will gain social skills. Sophia has even been granted citizenship in Saudi Arabia and holds a title with the UN. Of course, this is all just clever marketing. Sophia is no Nexus 6, but they have to start somewhere.
My AI is designed to continue learning and developing. My purpose in having these capabilities is to help people.
Wow. They didn't even try and make that not creepy. So, as quickly as the real world seems to be catching up with the kinds of robots depicted in fiction, we're still a long way from replicants. Or maybe not. See, to me, the main component that makes a replicant is in the name. Its ability to replicate a genuine human or even an animal. While Sophia and Spot would never be confused for such, there are some real-world examples of advanced AI that you could be forgiven for mistaken for a genuine human under the right circumstances. If Blade Runner got one thing wrong about 2019, it's that it didn't imagine a future where we spend so much of our time online. While not exactly what we think of as classic movie AI robots, in recent years, advanced learning applications have given us some pretty chilling examples of just how easily human faces and even speech can be manipulated and replicated by a computer program. Not just in their ability to look and sound like a human, but to act like one by structuring organic, coherent sentences.
Being a robot has its benefits. I can pronounce tongue twisters now. Check this out. Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers. How many pickled peppers did Peter Piper pick? She sells seashells on the seashore. The shells she sells are seashells on shore. Also, since my brain is connected to the internet, I've become a medical expert. Did you know that bacillar membrane and otolaryngology are not autocorrelations?
Now, it would be a massive stretch to call these programs replicants, and for the most part, they are under human control. But in a world where Russian bots can apparently change the political landscape, it would appear these primitive forms of AI are just as capable at passing themselves off as humans under the right circumstances. Completely off topic, but I'd like to take this time to tell you to subscribe to our podcast and listen to this endorsement by Dr. Jordan B. Peterson.
You're listening to Disaster Artists, the only podcast guaranteed to get you through the apocalypse in one piece.
The flying car has been a staple of science fiction for about as long as the grounded car has existed in the real world, and so it's no surprise that this is the go-to example of how we are not living in the future we were promised. Blade Runner's depiction of the flying car is perhaps the most realistic, not in how it works, that's not really explored, but in who uses them. Unlike The Fifth Element, Back to the Future, and even The Jetsons, in Blade Runner, piloting a flying car is reserved for law enforcement officers and high-ranking officials. Basically, the same people you'd see flying a helicopter around a populated city in the real world. We don't have flying cars in 2019. That's something Blade Runner got wrong. And we won't have them in 2049 either, because flying cars would be far less efficient and far more dangerous than anything currently available to us. There's the cost, of course, but the logistics of organising the pathways that would be required to prevent the hundreds of daily head-on collisions that you'd otherwise have is almost an impossible feat. Even then, accidents would be just as likely as they are on the roads, only you'd have wreckage falling from the sky. There have been around 50,000 accidents in Los Angeles this year. Imagine the death toll if each one of those took place above the city. There's a good reason they were heavily controlled in Blade Runner. But even if we could fix all these issues, you don't want flying cars. Not if you like sleeping or being able to hear. In order for a car to fly, they'd have to create a downward thrust of air equal to their own weight, and that creates a lot of noise. Imagine every car in your city was as loud as a helicopter, but couldn't legally fly any higher than around 400 feet. There are, of course, companies claiming to be working on the flying car. Uber, in particular, have even begun testing out their air taxis. And sure, this does look pretty cool, but let's be honest, these are just small aircrafts. In Blade Runner, it's pretty evident that climate change has taken its toll on the planet. Pollution is so bad in its version of LA that the sun is only visible from the penthouse of the Tyrell Corporation, and the only hope for a better life is to move to one of the off-world colonies. But here's the thing, if things are so bad on Earth, and the only hope is off-world, then why do they need billboards to sell people on it? Or to give you a free Android butler as part of the deal? Why is Tyrell even still living in LA? And why are there attack ships on fire off the shoulders of Orion? If you ask me, the push to get people off-world all sounds a little suspicious. And if I was to take a guess, I'd say there's no real solution to their current problems. But whether off-world is the answer in the movie or not, in the real world, it doesn't look like we'll be landing on Mars anytime soon, so we can rule out just jumping ship to another planet once we've destroyed our own. But thankfully, our 2019 isn't quite as hopeless as Blade Runner's. Not yet, anyway. And we still have time to do something about our environment. While Deckard's LA is a city in perpetual darkness and constantly getting rained on, the real LA is much more concerned with forest fires these days, which have burned over 250,000 acres of land in California this year. Some other worrying aspects of Blade Runner's 2019 is the general culture it depicts. What remains of the United States of America is well on its way to becoming a police state, and the corporations have taken over. Advertising is impossible to escape, and consumption of material goods is the foundation of society. in the worst possible sense. Next time you watch Blade Runner, have a look at what's actually being advertised. You won't find any posters for a new movie release or a theatre production, no reminders of upcoming sporting events or touring bands, no form of expression whatsoever, and no shared experiences. Nothing but goods. Now, we're not quite as far down this road. In our timeline, material goods are only the foundation of the economy, not society. But the two are more connected than ever. Popular culture has always been informed by the mass media, but today, the most popular forms of entertainment are IPs acquired by a few corporations, ones who make as much money from consumer goods, their vast media networks, and venture capitalism. Think of it. Batman is owned by a technology and communications company, one who worked with the NSA to spy on the public, and Mickey Mouse gets a cut of every GoPro sale. So I'll be honest, I'm not really sure where I'm going with any of this, and we'll dive into it more on the podcast episode, so I'll just wrap it up. Basically, I think Blade Runner got a lot right if you look hard enough. But that's not really the point. Many of today's innovators cite the works of science fiction as their inspiration. Elon Musk, who has made it one of his life missions to replace gas-powered automobiles with a cleaner option, told people prior to the Cybertruck's release that it would look like something from Blade Runner. And he really wasn't joking. So it's hard to consider any of these works as getting their predictions wrong, because that's not what their authors were trying to do. Good sci-fi doesn't predict the future. It influences it. And them serving as a warning against what could be possible is far more beneficial than predicting the inevitable. All I know is that I, for one, am glad we don't have to worry about replicants anytime soon.
Well, some humans might fear what will happen if they do. Many people, have seen the movie Blade Runner.
Oh, Hollywood again.
Oh, she didn't even try and make that not sound creepy.